Hi, it's Lara here with Witchy Wednesday for the week of March 21st to 28th, 2018. Happy equinox. Yesterday was the spring or vernal equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere, and it was also Ostara, which is a pagan or witches holiday that celebrates fertility and new beginnings, right? The celebration of spring, really, and new birth, that kind of thing. Um, we're at this point. The equinox is a balance point, right? In the year, it's one of the balance points, the spring equinox, and so it's a good time to really reflect on the balance or lack thereof, right, in our own lives, and to spend some time kind of bringing things back into balance for ourselves. So it's very Ostara, which I mentioned, is very much in line with Easter, right? Which is a Christian holiday that many of us celebrate, and Ostara, celebrated by the pagans, was a holiday that also had eggs and rabbits as its symbols, and the whole concept of resurrection and that kind of thing. So there are, several stories in mythology that line up with that story. But basically, we are celebrating at this time of year, as I said, new birth, new beginnings, sort of that sensation of, springing out of the gate, a fresh start, that kind of thing. It is the astrological new year, in that the sun has moved now from the last sign of the zodiac, which is Pisces, right into Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, right? And if we think of the zodiac as a cycle, even a life cycle, Aries is like the newborn. And so sort of that fresh start, into the world, and just discovering everything new, and really knows, um, not a lot about sort of what's external to it, but it's very sort of self-focused, right? Um, and so yesterday I talked in a Facebook post about the whole notion of Aries energy being self-focused, and that that doesn't have to mean selfish, right? Self-focused doesn't have to mean selfish. And so if we think about it that way, I always tell people when I do readings for them, and if you want to get your own personal reading, I didn't mention that off the top, but just follow the links below, or head over to my website, Newell-Barrette.ca, and go to the services page there, and you can see what readings I offer. But when I do readings, I always tell my clients that, you know, everything has a yin and a yang, right? A positive and a negative, a higher vibration and a lower vibration. And so all the zodiac signs are associated with these higher octave or higher vibrational energies and the lower vibrational ones. And so when we're speaking of Aries, at the higher octave, the higher vibrational energy of Aries is all about initiative and drive and ambition and passion and will, being sort of like the warrior. It's about inspiration, starting something new, going for it, all of that kind of thing. But then at the lower vibrational end, it could be about being, you know, acting without thinking, like being impulsive, or being quick to sort of lash out, or just doing things without regard for how it might impact others, because it's acting in a selfish way rather than self-focused or self-loving way, right? So how we choose to interact with these energies, or how they present for us, all depends on things like, how our level of consciousness, how self-aware we are, how much stress we're under, those kinds of things. So And that's not to say, I want to be really clear here when I say things like, Aries can be impulsive or quick to anger or those kinds of things. That I'm not saying that every person who's an Aries, for example, Aries sun, is that way. We all have all of the energies of the zodiac. Ooh, dog barking outside. I don't know if you can hear that, but we have all the energies of the zodiac in our chart somewhere. And but we may have more of an emphasis. I personally have 5 planets in the sign of Aries in my birth chart. So I'm familiar with this energy, on the higher and lower vibration. So when I say, Aries energy, I'm not just specifically talking about Aries people or Aries sun signs, just to be clear. Okay, so talked about the equinox, and I wrote a little bit more about that on Facebook. If you want to check out my Facebook post from yesterday, there's a link below to the Facebook page, and you can head over there. And if you haven't liked the page yet, then please do. I would love you to do that. And I post a little more frequently there. Then you see me on YouTube here, which is only once a week, so you can follow along a little bit more, keep a little bit more up to date on Facebook. Although I do intend, and I have had intentions to do more YouTube videos. Just life has been really busy, so haven't quite gotten to that yet, but I plan to. So what else is going on with the astrology this week? And as always, I've got some notes here because I don't want to forget to tell you something important. So the moon moved into Aries yesterday, the sun moved into Aries yesterday. Happy birthdays, Aries sun signs. And we also have Mercury and Venus and Uranus in Aries. And I'm going to show you the chart. I drew up the chart for today. This is what it looks like. Okay. And so you can see where we had all this energy that was in Pisces there a while back, right? And so lots of that has shifted into Aries now. And we see these planets in Aries, right? The sun, Mercury, Venus, and Uranus are all in Aries. And we have the moon in Taurus right now, but soon, tonight and tomorrow it'll be shifting into Gemini. And then on the weekend, it will be going into Cancer. And so if you follow the moon cycles, you may feel those shifts or recognize when the moon shifts into different signs and how that energy feels for you. So there's a few big sort of aspects or conversations between planets happening over the next week. But before I get to that, the one thing I want to talk about is that Mercury is going retrograde. So even if you don't know a whole lot about astrology, you may have heard, the expression Mercury retrograde, and it's sort of come to this place where it's reached pop culture. It's you'll see references to it or hear references to it in TV shows and different things like that. So all planets go retrograde at some point, but the thing about Mercury is it happens more often, right? And that's why we kind of tend to take notice of it, because it's a regular occurrence, meaning that it happens about 3 or 4 times a year, and for several weeks at a time. And so Mercury retrograde means that the planet Mercury appears to be moving backwards in the sky. It's not actually moving backwards, but it looks like it is. And so Mercury rules things like our communications, our thoughts, our ideas, information exchange, sort of also like the technical things in life, like our electronics, even our vehicles to a degree, that kind of thing. And travel, especially sort of short distance travel. Those are all things ruled by Mercury. And so when Mercury goes retrograde, it is important to slow down and double check all of those things, right? You might hear some astrologers, and it used to be the common, thinking to say, don't sign any contracts, don't go anywhere, don't do anything, don't leave your house. But that's not realistic. of course, because we, we live and we can't just stop doing all the things that we need to do in our lives. And just because Mercury goes retrograde, three, 4 times a year, it's just not practical or realistic. And so really what this is about is, as I said, slowing down, making sure that, if you do have to, for example, sign a contract or an agreement of some description, pay attention to it. Actually read the contract. Make sure that you are being thoughtful, not impulsive in your communications, and that you are understanding what the other party is saying, and that you are communicating clearly to others as well, whether that be verbally or through email, any form of communication, right? And with Mercury in Aries right now, so Mercury's going retrograde in Aries, is particularly important not to be impulsive in your communications, right? Not to sort of fly off the handle or make assumptions or just blurt things out, or saying things or assuming things without having the facts clear, that kind of stuff. And so Mercury is retrograde until April 15th. And there's also a shadow period on either end, which sort of means that, it slows down before it stations direct, and then it sort of revisits where it's already, the path that it's already traveled before it moves on to fresh territory. So anyway, over the next, at least until April 15th, and a little beyond that, just be really mindful again of your communications, of the exchange of information. Make sure, be extra careful that you're not, of what you've done with your phone, so you don't put it in your back pocket and drop it in the toilet. Those kinds of things, right? Because that can happen at this over the next few weeks. So it's good to be mindful of that. You see how astrology can help you, right? In practical day-to-day life. It really can, when you have an awareness about these things. Okay, what else do I want to talk to you about here? So, I'm going to mention a couple of conversations that are happening, sort of throughout the weekend in particular, that we might want to be mindful of. So first off, I already talked about Mercury going retrograde. The other thing I wanted to say about that actually is, be mindful, like, it's a good time to be confident in your actions, but not arrogant or overly aggressive. Like, it's about confidence, not bravado, if you know what I mean. So something else to sort of keep in mind there. And it's also a good time to revisit maybe something you had started before, like, a plan that you had, or an initiative that never really got off the ground. And so you want to breathe new life into that. This Mercury retrograde in Aries period is a good time to do that as well. So on Friday, we have the planet Venus, which is in Aries, right? And Venus rules our relationships, our love relationships, our resources, what we value, the things we find beautiful, things that rule the five senses, that kind of thing, right? Is all about Venus. And so that is having a conversation. Venus is having a conversation with Pluto, which is in Capricorn. Planet Pluto is in Capricorn, right? And Pluto moves slowly, so it's in Capricorn for a while. But this, along with another conversation that's happening, which is the Sun in Aries, squaring the Moon in Cancer, because the Moon will be in Cancer on the weekend. So these two conversations happening together can sort of be about some intensity in our relationships. It can be like things like, maybe sort of fears in relationships or jealousy is happening, or, maybe there's been unclear communication, Mercury retrograde, right? And so, there's a risk of maybe like saying things that are not really intended, or feeling like somebody's not being truthful with you, that kind of thing. So this can happen. But if we're mindful of this, and if we're careful of our communications, and how we're handling all of that, then Pluto can, it's about sort of transforming, and it's in Capricorn. So transforming sort of the status quo, or, the tried and true methods, or overcoming obstacles, that kind of thing. And so, really getting to the bottom of things. So if we're careful, and we sort of tread carefully in our relationships, but we're truthful and honest at the same time, then it can actually, it can be a positive thing. But squares are conversations of tension, and so there can kind of be some trying to work this out over the weekend, and just be mindful of that. So I think the last thing I'm going to mention to you today is the card that came up for us, and that is the Knight of Cups in reverse. So the Knight of Cups in reverse speaks to what I was just talking to you about, these aspects that, are happening over the weekend. And it also speaks to Mercury retrograde to a degree, because it's sort of a message, to watch our emotions in terms of, moodiness, jealousy. I tried to combine those two words, that kind of thing. And trying to keep that in check, really, right? It's about looking before we leap. It's about making sure that we're not being overly emotional in our actions and our communications as well. So, it's about, as I said, it's about honesty in relationships as well, right? And integrity, that kind of thing. So I think that about covers what's going on for the week for us. There's always so much that could be said. These videos could be well over the length that they normally are, but I try to just pick out what's really sort of prominent for the week and focus on that. And so, of course, if you want to know more about how this plays out for you personally, you can get a reading from me. And in these readings, I always give a little Astrology 101 mini lesson at the beginning of the reading to sort of, I draw your attention to your chart and the houses. And so when I do these videos and I say that Mercury is going retrograde in Aries, for example, you can look at your chart and you can see where does Aries fall in your chart. So that will give you sort of another layer of information about like what area of life that might be playing out for you in, right? Because each of the astrological houses, so each of these little pieces of pie here, represent a different life area, and so, or life themes. And so depending on where the planets are falling and the conversations that are happening between the planets, that will, it has an effect on the collective, which is sort of what these videos are about, but it also has then a more nuanced effect on, or impact on, the individual as well. So I'm going to leave it there for today, and I hope that you have a great week. And please, as always, like, subscribe, comment, share, all of that great stuff. Communicate with me, and if you have any sort of specific questions or anything you might like to see a video on or learn more about, then please reach out and let me know that, because as I said, I do have intentions to make more videos, different videos in the not too distant future. And so I'd like to know what people want to hear about. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.